Hola, you are listening to FirstGen Healing, a podcast on Latinx healing and awakening journeys. My name is Priscila Luna. I am your host, and I'm excited because today's guest is the CEO of Self Dates, Chris Farias. Chris, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Chris. So, I want to start off with getting to know you a little bit and for the audience to get to know you as well. So tell us about maybe where you grew up, if you're if you're the eldest, the youngest, give us a little snapshot.
Yeah, I was born in Uruapan, Michoacan, and I immigrated to the U.S. when I was 5 years old. I actually remember the entire journey from leaving my grandparents' house to crossing through the desert and arriving to the U.S. for the first time, and what my
Wow.
first English word was that I learned, which was quarter. And that was because when we arrived here, my dad, he was calling someone through a payphone.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that the coins were different and they were in Mexico. And I was like, what is that? He's like, oh, it's una cora. Um, so then for me, I was like, oh my God, I learned English. But I am the oldest. I have two younger siblings. Um, and I'm a first gen. And I think it it took a very long time to kind of accept that and even understand what that meant. And I think now, I mean, I'm 27 and now I've just kind of understood that I'm going to be the first to do a lot of things in my family. And I didn't like that growing up, that I had to be, the first to figure it out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but now it's become definitely more of like an honor to be able to kind of go through it, pave the way for my younger siblings, for my parents to, and I'm more and more understanding of like what that title holds, and it holds a lot of power, but also a lot of responsibility and a lot of struggles and pain. And I mean, I'm sure you know how that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So I think maybe I want to just touch on what a powerful beginning of memory, right? To remember the whole journey. I'm wondering if it's something that you appreciate or something that you wish you would have forgotten.
Yeah, growing up, being so when I came to the US, I was living in Anaheim, and it
Mm-hmm.
was a very like Anaheim, California, and it was a very predominantly white neighborhood, white schools, like a ton of white classmates. So being young and being undocumented and first gen, I didn't like my journey, how I got here. I kind of hid it. I didn't really talk about it because it wasn't because I was afraid to speak up about it, but I just felt like no one would even relate or even understand or even care what that meant. Um so I think for a very long time people didn't know about my status. But as an adult and more when I was like in high school and exploring possibilities for my future, I realized that my story is very powerful and could be empowering for other young Latino undocumented students that might feel like they're the only ones, or they're afraid to ask certain questions, or their future feels very uncertain.
Yeah.
So think now with my journey of kind of being undocumented my entire life here, I'm very proud of it, and I love sharing it as much as possible because still to this day there aren't many people that like to speak about it, or I mean, they have their own reasons too, and
Yeah.
I mean, for me, like, it's for the most part it's always been positive.
Mm. Wow. So you grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood in the beginning, coming
Hmm.
from Mexico. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't even imagine the culture shock. I actually didn't experience living in a predominantly white neighborhood until my teenage years, so in middle school. And it was a huge culture shock for me, because I came from East Los Angeles, in California, where it was like 99.9% Latino. And
Hmm.
so I can't imagine like going, at the age of 5, kind of jumping into that. Do you want to talk a little bit
Yeah.
about what that was like, and maybe
Yeah.
what was your like safe zone during those moments?
I didn't have a safe zone, and it took a very long time actually, but I'll get into that. Growing up, being undocumented. So when I got to the US, my dad he came prior to my mom and my younger brother. So
Okay.
he was already here for 2 years. But back in Mexico, like we hear stories about how in the US there's money everywhere, opportunities everywhere, and everyone's rich or whatever. So I think my biggest disappointment being even just 5 years old, like coming to a place that was nothing like what people say the US was. I mean, even though my dad was here 2 years prior to us coming, like he was very much like into alcoholism and poverty. And even though we lived in a white neighborhood, my dad was renting a garage in a house
Oh, okay.
and we lived in a garage. So I remember not fully understanding like what just happened. We left our entire world in Mexico and now we're here, but it's worse, I guess. I was so disappointed. I would hear my mom cry every night, like, why are we here? Let's go back. Like, we don't even have a house here or family here, and nothing looks like Mexico. That it kind of seeing my mom's pain kind of made as a little kid, like I grew kind of resentment towards my father, thinking like, it's your fault that we're living this way. And going to school, I suffered a lot. Day one, kindergarten, we were still in the end of the year. We came in April, so that was kind of like the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so my first day of kindergarten, my teacher, she was white, but she kind of knew Spanish. But I think like living in Southern California, you kind of know a little bit, or you kind of understand some words. So day one, I was crying in Spanish, telling her like, no hablo español, háblame español, no entiendo nada. And she was just like patting my back, and she's like, okay, está bien, está bien. And I remember very vividly. We had to color a dinosaur that had like all these different numbers all around it, and each number meant like red, green, whatever. But I didn't know any of that, so I was just coloring the whole dinosaur however I thought it was. And then she came to me and she was telling me that it was wrong, but because I didn't understand what she was saying, I just started crying and I didn't know I didn't understand anything. And then all the little Latino little kids that were in the classroom, they were translating for me. Which now as an adult, like you realize how like being so little, you're kind of you have some like big boy pants or big boy girl pants on, with that power of translation. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of us can relate that we were so little and we were the translators for our family, those important documents or whatever the doctor was telling us at 5 years old, we would tell our mom, like, um, and that was kind of, I guess, my safe space in a way, but still like I didn't want to share like where I was coming from because you're only 5, you don't even know what like
Yeah.
being undocumented means. But I was very, very lucky to where my dad was renting, the owner's house was actually from El Salvador, and she kind of hosted a lot of people that were coming in from different countries. So that house was like a big like Latino like immigrant house.
Mm-hmm.
So I was lucky enough to have two of my kindergarten classmates actually live in that house. So
Wow.
um till this day, like we're like family. We've known each other now for over 21 years, and it's really nice to always like go back to those days when we talk about like how they would make fun of me, like not knowing English and all that. But again, like outside of the house, like no one knew my status, and I didn't want to share it. I just didn't. I wanted to feel as like normal, whatever that even meant, like as possible, and try to avoid it. I think one positive thing I think about living in a predominantly white neighborhood was that like it was faster for me to kind of like learn the language
Mm,
and kind of adapt to this sort of new culture. Um, that the transition was pretty quick for me. I didn't even flunk kindergarten. Like the teacher was like, in 2 months, he
wow.
learned the alphabet, he learned the numbers, he learned the colors. He learned certain things that a kindergarten should be able to learn by the time he goes to first grade.
Yeah.
So I was pretty smart, I think, in that. But that was more because like I knew the importance of survival, and
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't just about me. I had to learn English to be able to help my mom really quick, or like be able to help my little brother with it when he goes to school and things like that. So
Yeah.
it was never about me. And I think in the long run, that really affected me, like doing
Mm,
everything for others and never about me.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. How powerful that you remember. And I think I'm just thinking, how different even your experience would have been. I mean, like, I actually skipped kindergarten because the kindergarten in the school that I went to pre-K with Spanish, kindergarten was Spanish, and my mom is like, that's all she knows. She just knows Spanish, so we need her to like learn English. So
Wow.
then they tested me into first grade, and it was a bilingual first grade. But even just thinking like what a different experience you got jumping into the neighborhood that you did, and probably maybe what you would have experienced in a different neighborhood. Wow. And I think, you said a lot of things that I think a lot of people can resonate, which is one, it's never about you, right? Like the milestones that you reach are not about you. They're about like what's needed for success or for being able to help others, siblings. Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely resonate with that as well.
Yeah.
So kind of, this podcast is about healing and awakening. And so I'd love to know which one you resonate with most, or if it's both. And where do
Mm.
you think that journey started for you now, knowing a little bit about where you came from?
Yeah. So kind of tying it back to growing up, never being about you, but more about like others. I think I kind of fell in this hole where like I told myself, well, all of my accomplishments are gonna be for my family or for my friends or, everyone but me. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of creating a big hole like in my heart and like in my own goals because sure like being first generation graduating college like that was one of the biggest accomplishments that I could have ever done for me, but it's crazy how like there was a time when I came in to realize that like I wasn't happy with what I was doing. Like my mom was, like my siblings were, like my entire family, and but I was like, dang, like what if I had majored in something else, or what if I didn't go to school and I would have just started my like YouTube career that I really wanted to do. Like,
Yeah.
um, you start to think, and I think it's been such a healing process to just kind of understand that, like things happen for a reason for sure. And I'm still so young and there's so much to learn still. And I mean, I read books about people that are starting their actual life like at 40 and they're thriving and happy. So I think going back to me feeling that I was the only one, like the only immigrant growing up, now I'm in a different phase where I'm like, I'm not the only one that's going through not feeling fully accomplished. Like, other people at
Mm,
my age didn't feel accomplished at all and they started at 30 or at 40.
mm-hmm.
So I think like feeling more like a robot than like an actual human, and like feeling real love was never really there. I think there was such a big disconnect. Like leaving my country for
Mm-hmm.
my parents, it meant like heartbreak, you know? So like there wasn't a lot of like tangible love given to us as kids because
Mm-hmm.
our parents were so heartbroken.
Mm.
And you know, my I shared about my dad being alcoholic. So like that was such a big like trauma to the family because you know we did have an alcoholic dad. So then I think I've always been so protective of my mom's feelings, that like seeing her suffer meant that I was suffering and all of my brothers were suffering. And you know, like there's so many like attachment issues and like daddy issues and even mommy issues maybe that like now as an adult like it kind of it kind of like affects you when you're like meeting new people, like friendships or partners, because then you know you grew up without that kind of love that now you don't even know how to give it.
Yeah.
Um, so I think like for me, my journey, like realizing that I needed to say no to a lot of things, a lot of people, so that I can be fully happy or even try to be happy for me. Um, that was like my first step into this like self-love, like healing journey, you know, because now that my dad's been sober for about 15 years, and my mom like that kind of obviously affects your partner. So my mom is now like kind of finding herself too, that
Mm.
now I'm an adult and I'm here sitting like everyone around me is healing, like and I'm still not putting myself first. Like what the heck? So
Mm.
just kind of doing the little things for me feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I started my journey on TikTok where it was after a breakup, and it was a breakup that I wanted to do for myself too, because again, like all my life I did everything for others to make others happy.
Yeah.
Um, that day one, I was like, oh my God, I'm by myself. Like I can go do whatever I want, you know, like whatever I want. So I got on TikTok, and one of my very first videos, I was like, hey TikTok, like I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what I'm saying, but I'm gonna like I'm gonna go on a self date. And
Mm.
I didn't even know what that meant really. For me, it was more like I'm gonna show people that they can do things by themselves. And
Okay.
in in that moment, it was kind of like me only talking to me. So it was more of like I'm gonna go back to this so that I can remind myself that I did this because
Mm.
in that moment I still didn't believe that people even went out by themselves because I didn't see it
Wow.
like
Yeah.
I didn't see it enough on
Mm-hmm.
social media. So I just did it. It was gonna be like my digital journal. So I went out, I think I went like to the movies and I did a TikTok about it. And then I started getting comments and likes and follows and like people like, oh my God, like I've always wanted to do this, but I'm so scared. Or like other people were like, I've always done this. It's so cool and healing. And I was like, oh shit, like I thought it was just like I thought I was only going through this weird
Yeah.
transition. So then my followers and like the support I was getting was kind of motivating me to do it more. And then,
Mm.
you know, like it was kind of holding me accountable to take myself out on a self date. And people were giving me kind of tips like when I go out, like I journal, or when I go out, like I listen to my favorite music, or I meditate. So through my comments, I was doing some of those things. And then like I think when I finally reached a certain following, I was able to go live and I was talking to all these like beautiful strangers, and it was a live that was so full of love from strangers that I was like, I'm gonna let this happen, you know, because I wouldn't.
Mm.
I used to just block it because for me it was like, no, it's my job to give love, and
Yes.
this was like, I'm gonna
Receiving.
just, yeah, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna trust. strangers. And like and I did that because my friends didn't know I was going through a breakup. Like my family didn't know I was like broken and all that. And my job didn't know like that I was this sad little person inside because all I would give to the world was happiness
Mm.
and hard work and that
Yeah.
this was my this be instantly became my safe space, like TikTok. And I didn't want to tell anyone, like my real friends, because I'm like, they're gonna laugh. They're gonna think it's silly, like, oh, TikTok saved me. Like, it sounds a little funny still, but
Mm.
every night I was going live with just again random people and just giving me tips, and I was able to kind of make that part of my actual life now that like I'm gonna do things for me and do the daily affirmations and plan out the day that I want to just dedicate to myself.
Yeah.
Look for that book that everyone's recommending. Like, listen to that new artist. Travel. I think right now my friends would think of me as like a person that travels a lot. A year and a half ago, like that wasn't a thing. Like
Mm. Mm-hmm.
never traveled because I just worked all the time and I went to school and weekends were for my like partner or like for my family. That traveling was never an option. And
Yeah.
I through TikTok actually I met really cool people that we were like, let's all meet in like Las Vegas. And I was like, okay, I'm about to meet up with random
Wow.
strangers, but let's do this. So I did my little solo trip to Vegas and met with some really cool people and had a really good time. And from those people, they kind of also flew from different places that I was like, I want to visit your hometown. So then I think a month later, I went to Seattle for the first time and stayed with like my new friends. And in my world, I was the happiest. But like outside of it, my friends were like, dude, what the hell are you doing? Like that's
Yeah.
that's not safe. That's are you sure you're good? But I didn't want to explain. I didn't, I was like, this is my own journey. I need to be a little selfish. And if it's making me happy and if I'm being safe and if I built trust around these random people that didn't have to care about me, like I'm gonna just do it. Like I fully trust it. And
Yeah.
um ever since that time, I think my little by little, like my close, like real life friends and family, they kind of understand now, like he's on his own healing journey. Like Chris is MIA for a week, like it's probably because he's on a trip somewhere or just wants alone time, and that's not weird anymore. It
Yeah.
was weird when I was unavailable at first, but now I'm like I'm unavailable and it's totally understandable.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, um, I think I went on a rant. Um, but it's
So maybe going back to the question. So I think you resonate with healing. It
yeah,
sounds like, yeah. And we learned, where that all stems from. And man, I can definitely resonate with everything you're saying. And I think it's a very select group of people who I think will truly understand like what you're actually carrying, because I think what you carry is invisible and not and everyone's perception of it is different. I think the way your parents maybe perceive your journey is different from your siblings, which is different from your friends. But having had a lot of fellow eldest first gens on the podcast, and just kind of like my friends are also typically that too, we carry a lot of things or put a lot of things on our back as we grow up from a very young age that maybe no one really notices. Like you, right? You took on your mom's happiness, let's say, her sadness. You took on, I need to learn English, but for my siblings and for my family. And so all of these things pile up to the point that when you're an adult, going on a what do you call it? Self date?
like update, yeah.
Yeah, going on a self date is an act of rebellion. in your world, right? Like maybe to others it's like what's the big deal? Like no, I get it. I get that like doing something just for you and because it makes you happy and it's not going to benefit anyone, like for you, it's a big step, because it's not something that you're used to doing. As much as, like, maybe, yeah, you went out with friends before or on dates or were in a relationship, like, no one truly understands that the lens that you're doing it through is so different than likely what they do their things through, you know? Does
Mm,
that make sense?
yeah, you nailed it with that. And yeah, it's an act of rebellion. I really like that. You're right.
So I love like yeah the way that you show up online and it's so cool and I'm glad that people are understanding what you're about and what you're doing, because it's likely that you're right. I don't think people display it because maybe they think it's nothing, but like for you you're realizing no, actually it's a lot. And I will say for me it was like a big deal too when I mean, I talk about my big rebellion moment. It was not a self date. It was quitting a job, my dream job, and
Oh.
it was super rebellious in my world because I was used to doing the right thing, the good next thing, so I totally understand.
Mhm.
But that led actually to self-love, self-care, and all of
Yeah,
that good stuff.
which is crazy, right? Because you think like you hear all these stories about like if you quit your dream job or like if you do things for yourself, it'll lead to like I don't know, like losing yourself and like sadness, depression, and all these negative things. But people don't really talk about the positives, which is, like you said, it's like the whole self-love, the healing, the figuring yourself out for the first time ever. And I think that's the biggest
Mm-hmm.
win. Um, I think for me, like it's so cool when I am out somewhere in like LA or whatever, and someone will come to me and they're like, "Hey, like I follow you on TikTok and like thank you for like motivating me like to go out on by myself or to prioritize myself." And then I love like I don't like to just say, "Oh, thank you," and then like walk away. I'm like, really, like what you do, like where did you take yourself
Mm.
out? And then they tell me, like
Yeah.
I got in the car and just drove off for 30 minutes with no destination. I think that's really cool, honestly. And because it's 30 minutes to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and they tell me those things, or sometimes like in my comments on TikTok, like they'll be like, "Yeah, I finally took myself out and I went on that solo trip." Um, and like I just love hearing those things. Um, when I realized that I was doing something positive, was when I went on a solo trip to San Diego, and I met with like people that followed me on TikTok, and
Mm-hmm.
there was this dude that came to me, and he pulled me on the side, and he's like, "Hey man," he's like, "I don't want to say it in front of everyone because I'm a little embarrassed, but like seeing a guy like take care of his mental health and seeing like a Mexican like go out on self dates like that motivates me to like take care of myself." And then he's like, "I'm not there yet, but I'm really happy to see that a brown kid
Wow.
from Mexico is like doing that because that's something that I want to do and then teach my kids how to do." And that like that made me so happy because that's
Yeah.
that's the reason why I'm doing this, like it's I take roles like I take like leadership roles wherever I can, and I think for a long time I was such a like student, like first gen, like advocate for a ton of students, and I still do that. And being like an immigrant and like sharing my story to help other immigrants, now I'm taking this new role of like mental health and like just kind of pushing other guys to do it too,
Mm.
and other like Latinos that didn't grow up learning what like taking care of yourself was and how valuable your feelings are. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard like Latino parents saying like, like you're not allowed to feel, or like si lloras te voy a pegar pa que te like en verdad llores, things like that. And you kind of grow up thinking like, damn, like I'm not allowed to be sad then or cry about anything because, you know,
Yeah.
and I want to break that.
Yeah. So I am like a empath is what I like resonate with. And what's funny is I'm 30, okay? And my mom like recently was like, yo no me había dado cuenta cuánto, like, qué emocional eres, right? And I was like, wow, and you're my mom. Like,
Yeah.
but here's the thing, like, that's what I mean by everyone has a different memory of the journeys because I clearly remember when I would almost cry, she'd be like, ya vas a llorar, babosa. Right? Like,
Hmm.
there was anger behind feelings.
Yeah.
And so I learned how to, like, cry on my own and not show that and start hiding, right? Like many of us do. And I can't even imagine, likely as Mexican men, right, or Latino men, how much stronger that message was of like, you better not show emotion, like that is not allowed in this household.
Yeah.
So I can't
Yeah.
even imagine how much it's gonna take to dig that up and like reconnect with that part of you.
Oh yeah, of course. And it's the journey that I don't think I ever actually want to finish it because it's been such a educational like journey and relearning and unlearning things that
Mm-hmm.
definitely the digging happens, and sometimes I could be on a roll with like my self-love, my self-care, but then I'll hit that wall when I did too much digging that I'm like, oh
Mm.
crap, I'm gonna close. And then I do shut down for a day or two, but I think now I have tools to kind of help me like, get up again and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And as weird as it sounds, maybe it's not even weird anymore. Like TikTok is there for me, and it's mind blowing, like when
Wow.
I people tell me I go on TikTok to like find motivation through your page. I go on TikTok to find motivation through their page, like I
Yeah.
see like and I remember people, like I see people that would comment on my things that were really sad about something. I'll go like stalk their page, and then I see that now they're, on their own journey too. I'm like, okay, like that's good. Like that's what it's about. And obviously there's a lot of positivity, but I've also gotten negativity, and that's fair,
Mm.
and I will accept all that because I think we hear about how like social media isn't real, like it's there's a lot of filters in there that people don't fully share, and I think like it's it's something that I kind of receive sometimes too, like why are you by yourself? Like you're such a loser, like you don't have friends, like go find a partner, this and that. And it's like, thank you, I'll welcome that. And then, like I try to always just kind of answer with like that's what I was taught too, like that's what I was told to do.
Mm.
But
Mm-hmm.
like here I am like doing this and that, and the happiest I've been mentally, emotionally, and it's a gift that I wish I could just give everyone, but everyone's
Yeah.
journey is so different
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Do you resonate with like because I think sometimes when I hear stories like yours and that that I feel like I see myself in it as well. I think how I see it is we like in a race where you take the baton and then I don't know what that kind of race is called, but you take the baton and
Yeah,
you run, right?
right.
I
The
see
relay
it
race.
the relay race, there you go. So I see it as our parents were running a race that we were like kids, we weren't even a part of, but as soon as we got like maybe you got to America or as soon as like I became aware at 5 6, I took the baton and I ran. I was like, I don't even know what this is, but like I saw my parents run, I gotta run too, right?
Yeah,
And what I think, like what you're talking about, like the journey back to yourself essentially is taking back control of your life, like picking your own race, like evaluating, oh, shoot, like I was in a race and I didn't even realize it. I've been running, like,
yeah,
whoa. And so it's kind of like that pause of, like, who am I in this whole picture? What do I want for myself? And like, is this something I want to continue? Like, does that
mm,
resonate, I guess?
yeah. Again, I'm so happy that you can relate with me, and actually, understand what I'm saying, and that's 100% right. Like it's going back to what I said about you're on a roll and then you hit a wall and then you're like, what the hell am I doing? And then you wake up and you're like, all right, gotta keep going, and that's exactly it. And I think now, going with what I told you about having resignation towards my dad, like I
Mm,
forgave him. Like I forgave him with no questions asked because they were on their journey that I will never understand, and I'm okay with that. Like I will never understand why they did certain things that
Mm.
they had to do. Um, but what I can do is grab their baton. Is
Yeah,
that
the
what it is?
baton. Yeah.
Yeah, grab it and then go, just
Yeah.
go, because that's what life is sometimes. I don't want to get stuck trying to figure out why things failed, or even
Mm.
sometimes why things worked out, because it's so easy to self-sabotage. I do it all the time, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to just like grab it and go. Like
Yeah.
sometimes there's no questions. Just do it.
Mm.
Um
Mm-hmm.
and and that was definitely how that was my like what is it, like my mood, or I don't know, my
Purpose?
purpose, motivation to like start this journey. I was like, I'm just gonna do it. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if I'm gonna freak out at the movies by myself. Like I don't know if I'm gonna freak out like sitting down at the restaurant by myself, but I'm just gonna go. Like
Mm-hmm.
no one knows me, no one cares. Like just go.
Yeah.
And it's worked out like 9 out of 10 times. So
Mm-hmm. And I love how you said, like, when you do receive that negative feedback from, let's say, TikTok or just other people, if, like, the audience, if you guys find yourself in the journey, like, you need to hold on to your why. Like, why you're doing this, what your journey looks like or looked like. And so I think in those moments where you might get nervous, like, oh, they're looking at me weird or whatever, like, why you're doing that though, and it's not to be popular, and it's not like the reasons behind why you're being judged, for example, like, oh, you're a loner or whatever they're trying to call you, like, it goes way beyond that and it has nothing to do with that, and so I think
mhm.
you can double down on your why when someone is questioning you in that way,
Yeah,
or judging you.
yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I try to remind myself of my why like every single day, and I think it's just so important to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Being a first gen and not having like an older person tell me these things, like it it sucks sometimes, because like I'm like, damn, I wish like my mom understood this journey more, or like my grandparents or great grandparents, but they don't. And going back to like just kind of being okay with the past, then I just have to keep doing it so that I can incorporate it to my daily life, where eventually when I have my own kids and my family, I can now, it would be my job to just kind of instill some of what self-love is, what motivation is, and self-care is, and
Yeah.
just kind of leave it to them as well, because not everyone's going to take your own advice, and we
Yeah.
don't take our own advice, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Ooh, I think that I'm, super thankful that you're open and I guess up for speaking about this stuff, because I think that can happen sometimes in our own family units where we really truly need this, and then we get judged for it, not in the outside, like by our own family. They don't understand it, because they
Yeah.
don't know it in the way that we're trying to know it. Like, they don't sometimes know self care or self love in the way that we're trying to really access it, And so they might judge it. I mean, I know, like, the first thing that comes to mind is always like being selfish or just being weird or like se cree mucho. I don't know. There's just different ways that you might receive criticism from your family. But I think also knowing your background and knowing you're the eldest and took care of everyone else, when you change the character that you play in their life, they might not like it, right? If they can't
Mm,
rely on you 1,000% and you're reducing that to 150%, they're like, ugh, like, what is this? I don't like this. You're
yeah.
changing.
Yeah. And that kind of leads to my current kind of situation, where because now I'm traveling more, and because now like I'm experiencing more things on my own, I'll get little comments from like my mom, like, ya casi ni te veo, or like, ya casi, like, ya ni nos llevas a comer, or like my dad sometimes, like, he'll throw comments like, oh, pues tú pura fiesta, or like, tú puro, like, it's like, dude, and it kind of, if you're not in the right like mood in that moment, it could really mess you up, and it could. I mean, sometimes it like guilt trips me, and I'm like, oh, like yeah, he's right, and then I won't buy those flight tickets anymore, or like I'll like cancel whatever I had planned for myself because I'm like, well, like I guess they're right, but then you snap out of it.
Yeah.
Um,
I see them like little octopus tentacles that are like trying to grab you in again. Like, don't leave, suck you
yeah,
back in, you know? So, yeah, you have to kind of just take the little tentacles away. Like, no, this is not
yeah,
what I need in this moment.
right. And weirdly, I feel like it's kind of um I need to kind of rebuild like my relationship, I think, with family because I do feel like they're mad at me for choosing me. And that's probably not even the case. It's just like
Mm,
probably something new to them. I mean, it is something new to them, so they don't know how to handle it. Just kind of like how we don't know how to handle new things in our own lives. That I'm trying to figure out how to kind of rebuild some of that old like connect bond that we had.
yeah.
Um, but it's hard because you have to kind of pick your battle. Like, do I want to pick me and build me, or like pick them and build
Mm,
us? So I want to do
mm.
more of me than us, but it's hard.
Ooh, I think that stage is one that, yeah, I always call it like a delicate dance because you're constantly like reevaluating what's, like you said, picking your battles and maybe just not looking at it like it has to be the end of one or the other, but it just has to transform, to the point where you feel like you have enough space to do you and still are working on building that love and trust. But I definitely think that first it might feel like separation and then it like you can glue back in, but one of the things or the concepts that one of the healers that kind of helped me through was just like independence versus individuation, which is like a lot of first gens are good at becoming independent, where they might like have a good job and maybe even get a house or like get married and all of that, but there's still part of this web at home that really defines who they are and what they do and what they stand for. And so that's where individuation comes in, where it's like separating your values, your morals, what you stand for. But it can look like betrayal or it can feel like betrayal when you're used to being glued to it. It can look and feel like that for both parties. Like, what's happening? I feel you distant. I feel like we're not close anymore. But I mean, having have traveled that road and being a couple of years into it, I will say I do definitely think there is that coming back. But it took that separation, and in that, maybe trust that like your parents will also grow, like in realizing, oh, Chris is changing, like they will also get to look inward in a way that you're looking inward, because we think sometimes they're just going to be in pain, and they might portray just the pain, but it forces them to be like, oh yeah, like he's his own individual, and I want him to be
Mm,
happy. And sometimes that separation space allows them to come to that conclusion, because sometimes we
yeah,
think we need to get them to that conclusion, and that's hard. We can't like force someone.
yeah, you're right. So that's definitely the phase that I'm kind of in right now, but
Mm,
Um, it's a long stretch and we're learning along the way. And I think I'm trying like as much as I talked about like being kind of very close to my family and leading my family, the feelings part it's just not I can't do it. It's really hard
mm,
and because I mean for 20 plus years like I was solving their feelings that I, I just can't. It's so weird still. Even like I don't know. Right now I'm happy right now, but I think
yeah.
about when I'm like sad. I can't tell them like I'm just like no. It's just It's a journey.
Ooh, yeah. Ooh, super, super interesting. Well, I
Yeah,
I think like from the outside looking in, it definitely feels like you're on your way to that, and I think like
yeah,
you're building yourself back up, and that's like a huge part to then be able to come back and stand your ground when it comes to the big emotional
yeah.
interactions and all of that stuff. So, I think my next question for you is there's kind of like this mystery that I like sense. As much as you share and I love it, I'm like, man, he is so good at like displaying like the way that you story tell, without actually saying too much. Like I feel like when I post content, I feel like I have to talk and it's 3 minutes of me talking and you in 60 seconds tell a story and I'm like, wow, like how does he do that? But at the same
Yeah.
time, there's like this mystery. So would love to know a little bit about like maybe what you currently do.
So I work in news. I have a degree in broadcast journalism, and
Mm,
I think like we are taught to not share too much of our personal life on social media because even though like n- as students we're not professionals or public figures yet, at least people in our career field, they will dig like who we were
mm,
in college, who we were like in high school. And so now I feel like because I was instilled in me when I was a lot younger, I kind of just do that. Like I was taught to not be the story, but to tell the story as a journalist. So it's a battle because it's like I'm telling my story on TikTok, but in reality, like I want this to be for other people. Like this is a story
mm,
for you. And then and I think it's just part of like my career, part of hiding my identity as a little kid. Like I'm still working on me being the spotlight, but I I'm not there yet,
okay.
obviously. But like yeah, like there's mystery because people have told me like, yeah, like we you post what you do, but like what the hell, like, there's more. And then I think I just protect like my like family a lot and like, I don't know, like certain little things about me because in my career, like there's so much that is already being shared that those little moments I rather just keep to myself sometimes and just like
Mm-hmm.
never post about it or never talk about it. Um, which is why and weird connection. Th that's why I started sharing my feelings on TikTok because a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, TikTok in my industry wasn't a thing. Like
Mm,
I was all over Twitter. Like I had to use Twitter for work. I mean, I had to use Instagram for work, Facebook, all that. But TikTok, like, no, none of my colleagues followed me on TikTok because that was not a thing. So that's where I could finally like curse and like be me and show what I eat, show what I do, like all of that. I was able to do it on TikTok. Um, which now like everyone's on TikTok and I work in social media for my job, so
yeah.
all of my coworkers follow me now on TikTok and all that. So it changed a little bit, but I think because I want to be remain as like kind of professional in a way as possible still, I don't overshare, I guess. So I'm thinking more of like just my career, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's I don't know if that answered your question, but I think that's really why like there's mystery.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
No, I love that. I mean, I think one key thing that you said is like, it's not about me, it's about like, or it's not about me, it's about the viewer in a way. And it's not about
Yeah.
my story, it's about the story.
Hmm.
So, man, I think like that's probably what keeps us coming too, like not knowing everything and still getting and feeling like we're following along everything that you do. So super cool. I mean, now knowing that and knowing that your background is in that, I'm like, dang. So it's like an art, you know, like you're actually, it's like
Yeah.
what you're actually doing is working in a way. So that's super cool. So now the next section is on resources for people that maybe are following along, and I'm like, yep, I resonate. I totally am following his story. I would love for them to leave with some resources that you use and that they can take on. So the first question is, what is your favorite healing or mindful tool that you've learned to incorporate?
So whenever I'm feeling like I'm in a ditch or like I just can't keep going, I go on my little self dates where I'll get in my car, play my favorite song, my favorite music, drive 10 minutes. I live about 15 minutes from the beach. I'll drive down the
Mm,
beach, the cliff, and I just sit there, go on airplane mode. No one can bother me. I just sit there, watch the waves and just think about my day, think about, how I could change whatever I'm feeling if it's possible and then like start reading. I carry a book almost everywhere I go,
mm,
some like self-help books and stuff,
mm-hmm.
so I'll do that. I'll read like a chapter and then I'll just like come back home and I don't leave my car until I feel better than I was feeling before I got in the car. And then sometimes like I'm not ready yet and I'll sit in my car for another 10 minutes. And then once I'm like, all right, cool, I'm fine. Then I get off and then I continue with my day. So that's kind of
Wow.
my number one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And you included many, I think, tips within it as well. So, yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
What is a habit that you do for yourself every day?
I actually in my bathroom mirror I have a post-it that says you are enough. Um, so in the morning as I'm, getting ready or whatever, I look at it and I read it. And at first I thought it was silly, but honestly, like we go to the bathroom multiple times a day, so like just seeing that multiple times a day, like it kind of sticks to you. And you're like, dang, like,
Mm,
I'm at
mm-hmm.
work, I'll go to the bathroom, I'll see it, I'm enough. All right, like I'm meant to be here and it's something that I really it's become a habit for sure. Whenever I'm traveling, I still take my little post-its and I either keep it in my bag and then I'll just like read some of those affirmations or I've shared it with a few friends too and then like we'll post an affirmation on their bathroom and
Wow.
it's nice when I come back and it's still there. I'm like, yeah, like, I'm glad it's working for you too.
Aw,
Hmm.
look at you making
Yeah,
ripples of change everywhere. How
yeah,
beautiful. Okay,
yeah.
what is a favorite song to listen to when you need to feel inspired?
So I love Bad Bunny. Everyone knows that I love Bad Bunny.
Yes.
He's not all about perreo. There's a song that I love and it's called Antes que se acabe. And that song really helped me get through it. And it still does all the time because I love this lyric that says like it stops, like the music stops, and then he's like, pero hoy salió el sol y hoy me siento mejor. Lo malo pasó y el tiempo es mi doctor. La vida es una movie y yo soy el director. And even saying it right now, that just like it pumps me up because like
Yeah.
I think about when it was so dark, um, and when I'm in the car or I'm walking or I'm listening to that song, like I'm alive and I'm like looking out and El Sol is a metaphor, I think, and it's more like pero hoy nací, and me
Mm,
siento mejor. And there's so many times when like we feel so alone, that freaking song always gets me.
yeah. Ooh, I
Yeah.
love it. Are you a lyrics person? Because I'm a lyrics person.
I'm a lyrics person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can just
Because,
imagine, oh my God, you can just imagine me like bawling my eyes out at his concert when he's saying that song. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think like when you pay attention to the lyrics, it can change you in so many ways. So it's like music hits different, I think, when you because you're the first person to like quote the lyrics from the song. I'm like, ooh, my people.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
because it's different. It's different than me like, oh, I like this song. Like, yes, that too. But like when there's these like bars in
Yeah,
there that like hit, oh yeah, it's
yeah.
different. All right. What is a favorite quote or advice that you refer back to or that you like to just read for inspiration?
To always remember that your day one is someone else's day 100. And that really hit me because it's so easy to compare yourself to someone else's journey. And when you start a new job, like you're the new guy, you compare yourself to like the top dog at work. Like you start, I don't know, a cooking journey and you compare your cake to someone else's like three-tier cake. Like, but that's your day one. They've done it 100 different times.
Yeah.
So whenever I'm struggling and I'm new to something, that's exactly what I think about. My day one is someone else's day 100.
What is an influencer that you follow that leaves you positively inspired?
There's this influencer named Louis Castro. So I've been very lucky to kind of see him around LA.
Mm,
But there's a part of me that I hide a lot, and it's like more of like me and like sexual orientation and all of that I think Louis does so much for like who he is as a person and a family, and he shows like his flamboyance on like social media that it's so
yeah.
like it's so motivating to just like be the baddest perra like he says. And I think he's just someone that I follow because I it's always a guaranteed like good time. um
Mm.
And like I know for a fact that if I go on his TikTok right now, there's some really good content that will just cheer me up.
I was
So,
watching I think it's called a compilation, like where they put like video clips of him from the beginning,
yeah,
and like his evolution. I'm like, wow,
yeah,
so cool that he went through probably so much BS too, being himself and showing up, but you can tell like he was determined to be himself from the beginning, and that's so so
yeah,
inspiring.
yeah. Oh, for sure. I know exactly what video you're talking about.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. And then lastly, for the resources, is a feel good or powerful book or movie?
A book that really helped me and continues to help me is You Are a Badass. It's a big yellow book that you can find at Target or basically any bookstore. But it has templates and examples of when people felt their lowest and what they did to kind of come back alive. And I think just even the title by looking at it, it's always something that just shocks to my face that I am a badass. And um I think my journey overall has been a lot of like self-doubt and like like not having self-love. So
Hmm.
just even reading the title,
This one question was suggested by one of the listeners, which is, what is your superpower?
honestly, like I would say I know how to be invisible, but in a way of like reading the room and understanding that sometimes like the situation is not about you. Like disappear for a little bit and let that person feel what they're feeling. It could be a happy feeling, it could be a sad feeling, but sometimes like you don't have to fix things. You just have to hear that person. Um, and I think my friends come to me because they know that I know how to be like invisible and just like let them feel. So
Mm.
that's my
That's
superpower.
even like advice for first gens because we are fixers. We think we have to fix every problem that comes our way. So that's awesome
Hmm.
advice too.
Yeah.
Okay, last section. This is the fun questions. So it's like I don't know, rapid fire. Salsa verde or roja?
Verde, always.
Horchata or Jamaica?
Horchata,
Bad Bunny or Daddy Yankee?
Bad Bunny,
Concha, because you're,
100%.
I think like the younger people like Bad Bunny, no questions asked. But those of us that are like, in our almost like 30s, it's like, oh, but Daddy Yankee.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know, but I can't.
There's no loyalty to him no more. Okay. Concha de vainilla o chocolate?
Vainilla.
Okay. And we're pulling up to your favorite taco place. What is your order?
Son dos al pastor, dos de asada con todo, chile, I mean salsa verde, y yeah.
Yes, es todo. All right, beautiful. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time, for what you shared, and for what you're doing. I mean, I think what stuck to me the most from our conversation is that person that pulled you aside and what he said, and it's like a representation of what you're doing, and the impact you're having. So thank you so much for that. And maybe if you can just say one more time where people can find you and any last thing you'd like to say before we close out.
Yeah, last words. Honestly, guys, like it's tough out there, you're gonna have a lot of doubts every single day and a lot of accomplishments every single day, but it's all in your head. So block those voices, get out there, take yourself on a self date, stay in your car, stay in your room, like just separate yourself from the world for even a minute, and it will make a big difference. So that's my advice. And you guys can find me everywhere on Instagram, on TikTok. It's Chris period Farias, Farias. And send me a message and just tell me about your journey because I love hearing about everyone's journeys.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with your amigas, your amigos, your amigues. And remember, First Gen, I love you, I love me, and I can't wait for you to love yourself. Bye.